Much. Thanks. We go on because we've got more questions to get through. Thank you very much for that. Sheldon Cassidy, please.
Is it right to investigate Jimmy Savile's past now he's dead?
Is it right to investigate Jimmy Savile's past now he's dead? Janet Street Porter.
Well, I started in television in 1975, and I worked first of all in commercial television as a presenter. And there was definitely a culture where there was inappropriate sexual behaviour, not necessarily with underage boys and girls, but there was a culture in light entertainment that made me feel uncomfortable. I was in my late 20s, I wasn't, you know, and there was nothing I could say or do about it, but I was aware of it, of things going on in dressing rooms. So it's not just a BBC thing. I think you'll find it's across commercial television as well. What, with underage girls? No, I'm not saying with underage girls necessarily, but I'm saying inappropriate sexual behaviour with quite young people. They might not have been underage. When I went to the BBC as an executive in the late 80s, about 1987, I was aware of the rumours about Jimmy Savile. I was also aware of rumours about other people. There was a culture, and it was a generational thing. In areas of light entertainment, behaviour was tolerated. I feel the reason why these women never came forward before was nobody would have believed them, because Jimmy Savile raised so much money for charity, and he used the money that he raised for charity as a bargaining power to buy silence from national newspapers. And if ever there was a time when someone might have blown the whistle on him, he would threaten those newspapers and those reporters that charity money would not go to those hospitals. And I know a female journalist that went to interview him that said straight away, I was really uncomfortable. His behaviour was totally inappropriate. But women, you know, we're going back, you know, to the late 80s. Even then, entertainment on television is a very male-dominated area. If you just wouldn't have had a voice. I feel the women have come forward now because he's dead. Because and it's just shocking. But there's no doubt in my mind that it happened. No doubt at all.
And is it right that it should be investigated now?
Absolutely.
The question is because he's dead. Now that he's dead.
Because we're, you know, I don't want to talk about people who are around now, but we want to send out a really clear message that if you're underage and if someone's in a position of power because they're a well-known TV presenter or producer or director who can hand out fame to a younger person, you must not abuse your position.
Okay. The man up there on the right, do you, sir?
We have to have an investigation so that if this happens in the future, more and more momentum will be gained by those who find themselves in difficulty, find themselves in trouble, needing to come forward to explain to people and be taken seriously. Sexual crimes in this country, as is true across the whole world, are very rarely taken seriously by authorities. We've seen this in the Rochdale instances where the authorities didn't take the girls seriously. And the culture needs to come in where we have people given an opportunity to come forward secretly, quietly, gently at first, so that the evidence can be amassed on a gentle basis, treated with respect, treated with dignity, treated with trust, so that if there is something there to investigate further, it can then be brought out. This must be investigated. It must be investigated thoroughly. And if there are any other people who have been complicit in this, as is seeming more and more to be the case, then they need to be brought to account as well.
Okay. Well, rest assured, a lot of people knew about it at Television Centre. A lot of people at the BBC knew what was going on.
When you say knew, because a lot of people talk about I'd heard rumours that and this and that. You're saying
well, it was certainly more than rumours. It was certainly more than rumours because it was something that went on a regular basis. But you know, the women involved were just girls, and some of these girls came from very vulnerable situations. They came from special schools. They came from the places that Jimmy was supposed to be helping. Who would have believed them? And some of the women have said that when they did say something, they were punished.
The woman in red there, in the third row.
I don't think people have a problem with the girls coming forward. I think they have a problem with the celebrities that are jumping on the bandwagon, saying that they knew about it in the 70s and 80s and said nothing about it.
Ken Clark.
Well, it's very sad, and everybody's feeling a sense of sadness and disillusion. Plainly, it needs to be investigated, precisely because we can firmly get rid of the culture which Janet has very graphically described, which has got to be got rid of. I agree with the man at the back. I think Rochdale is even more serious. What on earth was going wrong with the culture there? And I think these things need to be investigated. I hope it won't be looking for scapegoats, people to blame, trying to identify people who, unless they have seriously behaved wrongly. But I think investigation, openness about this will help to ensure that nobody will actually tolerate this kind of behaviour again. And we obviously, Janet's very pointedly reinforced the fact we need to ensure this sort of thing doesn't come back.
The man in the pink jacket there, and then I'll come to you.
I'd just like to talk from personal experience. My wife was abused when she was a young girl. And I know how appalling it is and how difficult it is for these women to talk about it. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to those women for having the bravery to come forward now and say it, irrespective of whether he's alive or dead. What we must do, we must listen to the children. And also, what's clearly gone on here is loads of people have had suspicions and they've said nothing. Something should have been done and this man should have been stopped. I don't care how much he made for charities. The papers were wrong. If somebody's abusing a child, no matter how many, one child, if somebody's abusing him, that man should be stopped and should be put away.
We've had discussion about accountability, and I just think it's quite interesting. As a powerful female figure in the media, if you were aware of those rumours, what prevented you from perhaps blowing the whistle?
I heard the rumours, but I was working in an environment that was totally male. When I was 10 years old, my mother took me to a hairdresser. She left me there. He molested me. I went home. I told my mother, and she hit me. So you're talking about how women react in situations like that. Do you really think that if I had said to somebody at the BBC higher up than me, this is going on, nobody took any note? They wouldn't have taken any notice whatsoever. None whatsoever.
OK, Susan Kramer.
Do you know what utterly dismays me, and I think I'm even more horrified now that Janet's added to the picture, is that we do, as an establishment, say to people, you know, when there's been a terrible crime, please, it's your duty. If you think it's your son, if it might be your relative, it might be someone else, it's your duty to come forward. And then when the establishment has something happening within the establishment, people lack the courage that they spend all this time calling on other people to have. And it really, really disturbs me. And I just do think within every institution, the BBC's got to go back and work out what on earth happened and what its child protection policies was. But could I say something else? The media frequently run these stories criticising, you know, the CBR checks and what's this modern mollycoddling. You know, we have this lovely author who goes into a school. Why should they have to be CBR checked? Why shouldn't your neighbour be able to pick up any child from school? And why should they have to, you know, be verified? If anything, this really underscores the fact we can't make our children 100% safe. But my goodness, we owe it to them to do virtually everything we can to make them safe.
I think these issues do need to be investigated, and I think that all of us should resist the argument that somehow there was a different culture, it was a long time ago, therefore it doesn't matter. Let me try and explain to you why I think it does matter. Of course, Jimmy Saville is now dead. There is not going to be a criminal trial. But these women have had the courage to come forward. But it's not just about the suffering that they have endured, although they deserve some kind of closure if that can be achieved by it being recognised. It is also that there are probably people watching this programme this evening who have suffered abuse who have not come forward, what message would it send to those people if these allegations were now just swept under the carpet? We've got to create a culture in this country where for girls, for boys, for women and for men, it is appropriate and safe to accept the fact and for everyone to understand that it is your body and nobody has a right to abuse it. And that relies on, when someone has the courage to come forward, we need to listen, we need to take seriously the allegations, and we need to make sure that the person making the allegation is not judged. Because that's one of the things we've got wrong as a society before, that when somebody has come forward, all too often the victim has been blamed. So I do think it is critical that the BBC accepts its responsibility. I welcome the fact the Metropolitan Police have said that they're going to look at these matters, because this is not something that happened in the 70s when Top of the Pops was on. Look at Rochdale. Look at the experience of the Catholic Church in terms of child abuse. We still have problems in our society, and we need to make sure that everybody who is suffering this kind of abuse is confident that they will be taken seriously, listened to and helped.
I think it's absolutely right that this is investigated. In fact, it would be a scandal if it wasn't investigated. And as we've heard from the gentleman at the back, you know, the recent events in Rochdale tell us that it's not just something that went on years and years ago. So there is clearly a big problem here. And the fact that this has come out now and that these women have come forward is an opportunity to address this. And I think the BBC clearly, based on the allegations that have been made, have serious questions to answer. And if those questions aren't asked, and if those questions aren't answered, well then, you know, the credibility of the BBC will be seriously undermined as a result. So this has to be investigated. It goes way beyond the actions of one individual man. It goes way beyond that and